So last autumn, I bought 100 weight of like a big sack of bulbs. There must have been, I was planting them in batches of 200, and I think I did that 5 times. So there must be about 1,000 bulbs
Oh
planted
my
around.
goodness, Biddy.
I'm just
Wow.
in a small suburban garden, it's not. So I am awaiting this riot of colour this year, and they
Oh,
have. I
wow.
I thought for a while I had planted them too deep, and then I was like, oh, are they ever going to make it to the surface? But yeah, they're poking out, and yeah, it's going to be, and then they'll spread as well. So
Oh, wow.
it's exciting, and it's those things, and I think that's what you do. I know that's what I do. I connect to nature, and I use nature as my guiding light now.
Welcome to The Full Stop. We're a CIC podcast and online community for childless not by choice people. We are owned and presented by childless not by choice people, and it's suitable for you if you're a cheerleader and an ally as well. The Full Stop podcast is hosted by Michael Hughes, Sarah Lawrence and Berenice Howard-Smith. We explore the themes that make up the childless identity, and we hope that with our guests you'll find the information, inspiration and, if appropriate to you, your space in the childless community. On this episode we're joined by Biddy Lee, author of Barren, as we talk about the overlap between ancient and modern storytelling and the wide-reaching theme of childlessness. As many of you may know, me, Berenice, I'm an avid reader. As well as designing books, I'm a huge fan of the NOMO Book Club. I also host Culture Club, a monthly chat in the Full Stop community in which we talk about books, podcasts, music, film, television that are a suitable watch or not so suitable. Barren is a firm favourite read of mine, as it is for many of you, and if you haven't read it yet, you'll learn in this episode why it's so loved and how Biddy was inspired to create a truly unique character whose presence is almost certainly not unique to many of you who long to be a parent. You can find other episodes on writing and books, on past podcasts and other links in our show notes, and more about Biddy. And a warm thanks to her for her time. Both Michael and I said we could have run this podcast for hours. Please remember that the thoughts expressed by our guests on any episode of our podcast are their own and not necessarily those of the Full Stop. Biddy, do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hello, I am Biddy Lee. I am a writer from Armagh, and possibly even related to Michael, who has just informed me of his family tree.
Are you really?
Yeah,
that's what I missed.
No. The running joke is that everybody in Armagh, if you go back far enough, is related to each other, But I've travelled quite a lot. I've lived abroad a lot. I was that kid growing up in a small town, couldn't wait to get out of it. And then I came back and realised I just love being here now. So that's nice. And I write plays, and I write novels, and I garden, and I look after 5 cats now. So I'm busy.
That's a lot. That is a lot. Yeah. And the author, we're primarily here to talk about Barren, but to generally talk about you and about writing and about that catharticness of writing, because I know our listeners love the episodes when we talk to authors, because I think it's inspirational to them. They're always incredibly popular, and I know that we've been in touch for a while on and off about getting you onto the podcast. And as I said to you when Michael had a technical issue, I was waking until about midnight reading Barren again. It's just a wonderful book.
I love to hear that.
Honestly, fan. I just love writing. I think it's amazing. It's a wonderful thing, and I think it's a beautiful book, and I just love reading. In fact, actually, in the Full Stop in our community, we have a thing that we do every month called Culture Club, where we talk about books, podcasts, films. Mostly it was for books, but we go off on all sorts of different tangents. And occasionally we remember to talk about books and all the culture things, but mostly it's around things that we've read that or seen or heard or doing that are safe spaces. And before we hit record, we were talking about how nice it is to have reading and create things that have been created that feel safe spaces for the listener or the reader or the person watching or engaging in some way, and how important that is. And I could just feel it comes through in Baron, but in all of your work anyway. And I wondered if you could just talk a bit more about how you bring that in. Have you consciously brought that in, or is it just something that just happens for you?
It's funny, like we were just talking about this even yesterday, this idea of what you bring consciously to the work and what you bring unconsciously to the work. And I think it's down to the character. So my character Poppy was such a caring character, and I feel like Poppy was the one who made that book so safe, because she carried the reader through the story. And Poppy comes from a place, the Enlightenment. So she's a spirit of a child who miscarried, and she in the story, she's come from this place. She's fully good. She's wholly pure, and hasn't been tainted by being immortal yet. And I think that maybe is what I set out to do, and then hopefully the rest of it was intuitively coming in, to be a safe place.
I think I think that part comes when you realise what Poppy's role is. For me, it came in quite early on. I'm trying very hard to not spoil anything for anyone that hasn't read it yet. So I'm talking very carefully, but there is a part when I wonder if it's different for every reader. I'd love to know from our listeners if you've read, if there was a different part when it came to you that you thought, oh, that's what Poppy is there for.
Yeah.
Because it took my breath away. I just thought it was just a genius piece of writing to do that. Yeah, it took my breath away.
But part of it was as well that when I went into the project, I was coming in as a mother who had lost her one and only pregnancy.
Yeah.
And I was craving this connection. I was craving the idea of talking to, in my head, she was my daughter. Who knows? But this was my imagine. And I suppose every story for me starts with imagine if. What if,
Yes.
So imagine if you could communicate with the spirit of your daughter, with the daughter that you never had, and what would she tell you, and how would she nurture you, and how would you nurture her, and what would that relationship look like? So that was in many ways that was the starting point for Poppy, and what she looked like. And of course she left our mortal world when she was still sort of round about the size. I think she was probably a little bit bigger than a poppy seed, but this was how the name had stuck, that she was the poppy seed, and those little charts that that mothers would watch, to see how their child is growing. So that was where she got the name Poppy. But I kind of loved the idea of that connection with, and because I still sort of feel that that there is this connection, with people who have passed, whether they lived or not. So I would sort of think of her in heaven with my father, but like it's a nebulous place, heaven. My idea of heaven is maybe the big clouds and the angels and that, it's just this realm where you know everything and you're aware of everything and everything makes sense, maybe is the bit that stops the torture of our human condition, where nothing seems to make sense.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's that untaintedness. There's an innocence, but a wisdom in the character of Poppy that just carries the reader through. And I think it's so relatable. As soon as I realised what Poppy was there and this communication, and 101 things kind of pop into my head about like, oh yeah, I felt that, that there is an awful lot, I think, of that projecting, or I'm projecting, I'm not sure if it's the right word, but that envisioning, I suppose, imagining when we're brave enough to do it, and that can be quite hard for some people, about what would our child be. It's like my thing about the last embryo that we had we never pursued, because defrosting that last embryo was just like, it's statistically, I'm just going to go through a hell of a lot of pain to get nothing. And then I always think, well, should I have, and there's always that, should I have? But I've always thought was a daughter. But I always thought the first pregnancy that I lost was a son. So,
Yeah.
and it's that kind of gender and then you start to kind of have this gentle kind of some sort of fledgling kind of relationship with something
I
that
think
never
that's where
formed, isn't
that's
it?
where it
Yeah.
starts, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know what? It's thinking about the children that you might have had. It's a very, very much like development characters for writing, really, because you
Yeah.
start with what gender are they? What
Mm.
type of character would they have been? And of course, so I have a couple of friends who are childless as well, and we always talk about how our children are obviously perfect because there is no evidence to the contrary.
That is true. I love that you talk about them, though. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know that I really heard that much like that. I don't. And that is is that cathartic?
I feel it is maybe for some people it might be a torture. It's an
Yeah.
overthinking thing, but I know for me, I think we for most of us we're pre-programmed when we're growing up to we might not think about it that much, but we're kind of assuming that at a certain point in time we're going to become a parent, and then there's the subset of that where we actively go out and try to become a parent, and that doesn't happen. I don't want to use the word fail, but it doesn't happen.
Mm.
And we have all the grief associated with dealing with that. And when I was going through this, which would have been, like, I'm not worried about telling my age, I'm 56 now. So this was a good 16 years ago now. It's a long time. And, but it wasn't just that this happened when I was 40. There was a lead up of nearly 20 years, 17 years to this point, where the line in the sand was finally drawn. But for those 17 or 18 years, nobody spoke to me about this other than my husband and maybe my mother, but it was all guarded and euphemisms and so basically my sister was very good, and we've always shared clothes and everything, so we kind of share her sons now. But you know yourself, nephews are great and all that, but it's not the same as having your own child. And so there was this thing about even other people who were child free or childless, however they want to identify that, there was this unspoken agreement that nobody would discuss that, and it was this, it felt to me like there was this elephant in the room, that if I was with somebody else who didn't have kids and they were my age, sort of late 30s, early 40s, I was so curious, like, were they trying to? Because I wanted to know what I felt, and was the grief and the pain and the roller coaster of hope and loss, was that something that somebody else also experienced? Or was I just weird, So there was this trying to fit in sort of sense. And very often with some of my really good friends who were going through the same thing, we never shared it with each other. And then a couple of glasses of wine in, maybe. I remember one Thanksgiving I did kind of pluck up the courage and ask a friend, and she was she was in exactly the same place. She was a couple of years ahead of me, so she had started to come to terms with what, and yourself, that's a process. So she was ahead of me. And what's really interesting is that nobody can nurture you through that other than somebody who has been there. And so we kind of become mothers for each other, because your own mother can't identify with that, you
Yeah.
know? So that was,
Yeah.
yeah, that was the thing. So that was why writing Baron for me was so important, because I wanted to, open up that floodgate, say, look, it's okay to talk about these things. You're not alone. What you're feeling is bad. It's awful. It's terrible, but it's okay, because we're going to get through it together. So that was, yeah.
Yeah. And I love that. What was the reader feedback to that? All those emotions? Because I noticed that some of the things online, people had said it was comforting and it was also challenging as well. And I'm wondering
Yeah.
how people felt about that, those readers.
Interestingly enough, so one of my beta readers actually thought, now, and it was funny because he had written a zombie book, right? And
Okay.
so it's another writer, but he had said, "Oh, I think you need to have like a trigger warning on this, because of Poppy's mother Ashling's feelings
Oh.
of of grief were so intense for him. And I kind of thought, so you have just wiped out, hundreds of people, and they're getting their heads chopped off and they're eating people, and you don't need a trigger warning, but this is what we needed a trigger warning for. But I got where he was coming from, because I feel what he was saying to me was, it felt so real for him. This feeling of the desolation that you have at a certain point. So there was that was one of the, I would say the only, I'm going to call that a negative remark, but it wasn't even, but that would have been one of the sort of more darker responses. But what I found was, so for the book launch of Baron, the artist who did the cover image.
Oh, Frances, yes.
Yeah, Frances. Yeah. So Frances has had a history. She has basically had nearly every kind of form of baby loss, and she also has a living child, thank goodness. But she has lost twins in utero. She has gone very far into the pregnancy, lost babies by miscarriage, and she also had a baby who lived for 11 days, Enya. And so she's had really extensive experience, and that was part of the reason why I asked her to read the book and design the cover, because I knew that she would plug into that side of it. And we had a joint launch then. We had an exhibition of her work related to baby loss, and the book was launched at the launch of the exhibition as well. And it was so interesting. I had people, like cold call, if you like, messaging me on Messenger and telling me their stories. And
oh, wow.
There was a gentleman contacted me from the United States to tell me his story of losing twins as well. And so it was about people were just connecting. I had people connecting with me they were telling me that their son or their daughter were having fertility issues, and nobody was speaking about it. And, they were really glad to read the book, because then it gave them a bit of a handle on what they were going through, so very, very positive feedback in that sense. And as a writer, it felt like I had delivered something to the world that was needed, and that was really gratifying. That's my cozy inner feeling when I think about that moment, and those messages are so precious,
Oh, they are, aren't they? I think it's when people just start somehow, in whatever way anyone shares their story, whether that's writing, podcasts, anything else, then I think that it can open up some other strands, can't it? People can start coming in, and that, I think, something when a few people that we've had on the podcast have found that people that they had listened to it but didn't know the full extent of our guest's story, and go, oh, we didn't know.
Yeah.
And some other conversation has opened up around that. And isn't that so important? That collaboration with Frances sounds really, really important. I mean, I design covers and illustrate covers as well. So I'm very conscious of that. That relationship can be quite intense sometimes. If it's sparking because there's another theme apart from the fact of requiring a cover, then I think that can be quite special. I mean, it sounds very, very important to the Baron that Frances was involved in that. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah,
she's so inspiring, and she's one of my sister's best friends. So she went to art college right out of the gates from school, and she's quite a renowned artist around here, and she and further afield. But I was nearly afraid to approach her for it, because I thought, I don't know if I can afford it. But
yeah, we're not cheap, no.
But what I have now is, because she did a full oil painting for me of this concept for the book, and I have it on the wall of my living room, and it would be the most precious painting on the wall. So it I got a lot out of it personally as well. Plus, it was great because, when somebody's your sister's friend, you don't really get to hang out with them because they're too busy hanging out with your sister. So I got all this sort of Frances time to myself, which was really good. And again, two artists, and we just would go off on a tangent, and, would be walking through fairyland by the end of it, because it was just, letting our imaginations spool. So I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
Fantastic. I love the cover. I really do. I'm a magpie for collecting covers that inspire me, and it's always nice to see something like that. I wanted just to go back to Michael. Sorry, I'm chatting away here. You interrupt, ask questions. It's not my podcast. It's the full stop.
I know how much you were looking forward to this, so I just thought I'll just let you have your fangirl moment.
Okay,
so you go right ahead. But all right, okay. I was just listen to you, Betty. I want to thank you for making me feel less weird, because like you, I imagine the children we would have had.
Yeah.
And yeah, so sometimes one of the stories I tell is, imagine me sitting in the back garden, and you could do that here in Australia, and and our son comes over, and his name would be Michael.
Yeah.
Because I am, we think about 7th or 8th Michael. They're the ones that come from Dungannon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I imagine, and I can see him. We're sitting in the garden together, and he comes and seeks my counsel for something, and my greatest pleasure would be to help him come to his own decision, because I had a dad who would tell me what to do, and I'm not doing that. That was I don't want to be like him, but I don't talk about that much to many people. So you've made me feel less weird. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah, and I really get that thing about sharing something, so I was a teacher for years, and to some extent that did scratch the itch, so I taught biology, and I just think that biology is one of those subjects that everybody's curious about anyway, because it's kind of about our bodies and about us, so the kids were easy enough to inspire, and you could tell them stories about animals and all the things that kind of connect. So I remember this moment. I had stopped teaching. I had left teaching because we had moved to California with my husband's work, and I was working then in conservation in California, and we were out in field work one day, and there was a snake, and it wasn't one of the poison. I think it was a garter snake. It wasn't one of the poisonous snakes. And I mean, it was about as thick as my finger and about 12 inches long, maybe a little bit longer. And it was absolutely gorgeous. And somebody said to me, "Do you want to hold this?" And it was just like, yes, please. So I'm holding this little snake. It's all curled up in my hand. I think it was enjoying the heat of my hand, and it was all sort of snuggled in there, and sort of just wrapped around my fingers a little bit. And I have a photograph of it, and I'm wearing like a Californian sort of cowboy hat, because you have to wear those when you're out in the field in California. And it was a real kind of my hair in pigtails, and I've got this little snake in my fingers. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to tell the kids. And I meant in my head the kids in school, because it was always about like relating my experiences back to them. And then I was like, oh, I'm not a teacher anymore. Who am I going to tell? And then it sort of hit me, and I was kind of sad then, because I was like, who am I going to tell these stories to? Who wants to listen to some old doll out in the fields, But, so that was that. So there was that moment of, and I think you pass it. It's like passing an empty room, and, the door's lying open, and you realize it's an empty room. It's that moment, and then you just kind of walk on, and you just don't feel like you can close the door on that empty room. But it's always there, So that was that.
That definitely chimes. Yeah, I think that's it. You can collect experiences in life, and I've certainly been guilty of that too. Of kind of like, oh, I won't collect any more experiences, because who's gonna know about that?
But you're writing, so now you've got somewhere to park them all.
Yeah, and podcasting, and to talk about, and I guess that's sort of it, isn't it? It's kind of just finding a different outlet and being a bit more creative about how we live our lives. But that can also be a bit challenging as well sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was listening to a thing about, they were looking at, like the famous women who, like Dolly Parton, Jennifer Aniston, who are, doing great things. They don't have children. And I kind of thought that's a lot to ask of us, though. We
Yes.
don't, we don't. There are plenty of mothers out there who do wonderful things too. Not every mother has to do the wonderful things to be worthy. And it's just this concept that we're worthy just as we are, and our everyday, like those little everyday experiences. Well, holding a snake in your hand is not necessarily a little everyday experience, but there are lots of little, I'll tell you what it is. Like, see, at this time of year, when a bulb comes up, like the wee green pointy bit in the garden,
Yeah.
I mean, that just brings so much joy to me. And because spring is around the corner, it's new life. I can't even explain, because it's kind of ridiculous how much joy it brings. But
Oh, no, it's not. It's
yeah.
honestly, I get very excited about this too.
Yeah.
I was out in the rain the other weekend trying to put some daffodil bulbs out in the street where we are, because I got across we don't have daffodils in our street. I'm going to make it a mission. The squirrels actually sort of dug them all up, and I was a bit peeved about that. But yeah, I just have them around my garden. I find that is a place of comfort, and the many, many, many rose bushes I've got too. If I can cram some more in this year, that'd be great. But yeah, it is, isn't it? It's not. I think it's lovely to have that signs of life, isn't it?
Yeah. It's funny because the thing about especially the likes of daffodils and tulips, and the best time of the year to actually plant them is November.
Yeah.
And it's the least favourable time, for me anyway, in the garden. I know you're going to have to flip this all around, Michael, because your seasons are the other way around ours in Australia. But so you're putting the bulbs in the ground, and you're looking ahead at like, oh, it's just going to get darker and darker from here on in. And, but it's the ultimate action of hope. It's the ultimate act, I think, of hope to plant bulbs. So last autumn, I bought 100 weight of, like, a big sack of bulbs. There must have been, I was planting them in batches of 200, and I think I did that 5 times. So there must be about 1,000 bulbs planted.
Oh my goodness!
I'm just in a small suburban garden, it's not. So I am awaiting this riot of colour this year, and they have.
Wow.
I thought for a while I had planted them too deep, and then I was like, oh, are they ever going to make it to the surface? But yeah, they're poking out, and yeah, it's going to be, and then they'll spread as well. So
wow,
it's exciting, and it's those things that, and I think that's what you do. I know that's what I do. I connect to nature, and I use nature as my guiding light now, and I kind of think about this is, I mean, hopefully those daffodils will be there for decades to come. My father and my sister's father-in-law planted a bunch of daffodils down some country lanes near us, and they come up every year, and that, so there's that legacy then of the daffodils. So
yes.
So
no, I completely resonate with that so much, but I think it some of the most treasured plants in my garden are ones that I never planted. They are the previous owners. There's a beautiful rose in our garden that inspired me to plant more roses, because we uncovered it we're by an air raid shelter, anyway, long story, and this rose was just there, and it's red, and I do very little to it. It's one of those low maintenance thing, because and it just flowers and flowers and flowers. All the other ones I planted, I'm kind of constantly kind of chatting to them and tending to them and making sure they're okay. Whereas this red rose, it just keeps going, and it's just beautiful, and it just brings me so much joy. And it's that relationship to probably the fact that someone else did that.
Yeah.
And I don't know who it was. I've got a good idea who it was, because we haven't had that many owners of our old house, but I know who they all are.
Isn't it lovely, this idea of the things that we leave behind? And they don't have to be children. We've left behind. Plant a tree, and see where that goes,
Yeah. I know of a couple of people in our community who've done some tree planting, and one lady in particular who has done some tree planting actually in Northern Ireland, who's actually put some trees up, and I know there's been suffering with the storms as well. There's been quite a lot of damage, but it's beautiful to see that there is just sort of places where we can carry it on. I kind of wanted just to circle back to something that you said around around mothers and around actually the fact that, we give a lot and that mothers can give more, and about climate and the relationship with nature.
Yeah.
Because I know Barron's was shortlisted for awards around infertility, but also climate as well, and around nature, all those sorts of themes. And one thing that I've seen pop up from time to time has been mothers fighting climate change and mothers taking kind of the lead. And this is not to parent bash, because we don't have a parent bashing space here, but it is that media kind of cotton on to that thing of parents doing more for the planet because they have a vested interest in the next generation and we potentially do not. But I kind of wanted just to touch back a bit on some of those themes in Barron, but also I think for yourself, it's coming across to me that, the planet, the climate, nature is also important to you, because the nature is its own theme in this whole beautiful story as well. It's kind of the character of its own, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's so it's a dual timeline story, and the other timeline takes place 4,000 years ago, and we actually do know what the climate was. The concept of this is absolutely mad, and I think that's why back when I was a 21-year-old student, it just captured my imagination so strongly, and that I ended up working in this area for 3 years after I graduated from uni. So tree rings are oak trees, all trees, but oak trees was the species that we focused on at Queen's University in Belfast. They lay down a ring per year, and you can tell how old the tree is. But you can also tell a lot more. You can tell by the width of the tree how well the tree grew that year, because obviously if it's an abundant year for the tree with lots of sunshine and the right amount of heat, not too much, not too little, the right amount of rain, not too much, not too little, etc., you get a wide ring. Where the story actually lies is where you get really narrow rings or sometimes no rings at all. And that's when the tree was stressed, and there was a lot of cold weather, there was possibly a lot of rain, and a very low amount of sunshine as well. And so the question then was, when we looked our tree ring chronology, so we've got like our modern day oaks, and we can link them because there's an overlap, so some older tree beams that we get from, say, archaeological digs, they'll overlap a little bit. So we've got this tree ring continuously going back 7,000 years. And in those 7,000 years, there are 5 major events. And one of them actually happened around the time that St. Patrick came to Ireland. And we think that that's why his conversion of the Druids and the Celtic people then to Christianity was because they were just at the tail end. He had it lucky that they were at the tail end of a climate downturn. And then he came along and started preaching about Christianity, and the weather got better, and everybody was like, oh, this must be the right religion because the weather has improved, So that's one example of what we can tell from these tree rings. But the event that I focused on was in 2354 BC. And there is also around that time evidence that there was a tsunami came in over the north coast of Ireland and inundated Lough Neagh. And I thought, imagine what that must have looked like. And I say all the stories start with the word imagine. So it was imagine what that must have looked like. So that element of the story began with standing on a hill north of Dungannon, a good bit north, about an hour's drive north of Dungannon, and imagining seeing that tsunami hit. And I had a lot of information on tsunamis at that, by this stage, because you can look at the tsunami that hit in 2005, I think. And then there's the tsunami then, and I think it was 2010 that hit for Japan. So there's a lot of information, and I was able to extrapolate that out and imagine what it looked like and how it worked and all that. So, but the bottom line was that during that event, there were 9 years. So that tsunami, we think there might have been I extrapolated, I put a lot of things together. So none of this it's all like touching on scientific fact, but there was a tsunami. We don't know what caused it, but there was also a huge downturn in the climate, and it might have been from seismic activity in the North Atlantic, Iceland area. And there definitely was, we have evidence for a volcanic eruption during that time. All this ash is thrown into the air and it blocks the sunlight. And for 9 years, the tree rings did not grow.
If the topics in this episode chime with you, you can get in touch with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Insta, LinkedIn and Blue Sky. And we love your feedback. Childless Not by Choice listeners can carry on the conversation with us in our safe place at the Full Stop online community. For more details on how to join and to claim a free month trial on us, please visit www.thefullstoppod.com. We'd like to give a huge thank you to the current members of our awesome online community, because it's down to them that we can keep the lights on for the podcast and look forward to giving back to the childless community as we grow.
In the north of Ireland anyway, and probably the whole of Western or the Northern Hemisphere was probably affected by this volcanic ash cloud. So when you're Neolithic and your crops aren't growing annually, you can't hop down to the local spar shop and get something out of their freezer. So you either have to migrate south, which I hope most of them did. Also, I mean, moving like that, migrating south would have been quite costly for them, because they would have had to try to bring their herds with them, but they probably were only going to move after they were sure that the summer wasn't going to come back to them, so would they have held off 2 summers, whatever, we're not sure. There's also in unwritten, there's handed down storytelling stories of plagues hitting at that time. And at that time as well, it was the start of agriculture. So humans would have been living in much closer proximity to cattle, and measles is a disease that jumped from cattle into humans. And measles is one of the most easily communicated diseases. I can't remember the word for it. Thankfully, we're not in COVID times. I had all the terms for this back then, but basically, if one person has measles, and they're with 100 people, 99 of them are going to end up with measles. And then if they are a weakened population, 10% death rate on that one. So that's quite high. So I was thinking, well, that plague could have come from, we've no evidence either way, but it's a likely scenario that could have happened. But one of the nice things that backed up my thought process on this was that if you look at tombs with remains in them from pre that event, Mesolithic tombs, the DNA traces back to people coming from the likes of Greek origin. So they would have come up through the seaways because it was easier to travel by sea. And then after the 2354 BC event, for 30 years there was nobody there, and then there was an influx of people sort of from Eastern Europe, sort of Poland area, that what is now Poland, coming in, and the gene pool analysis backs up that theory. So that was nice, because I only went to that lecture after the book was written. So I was like, yes. But anyway, that was me getting lost in science. Sorry guys. But what I loved
did. It's not, honestly, it's just fascinating. What I did
with that was I imagined a tribe in Ireland at that time, and that one person in that tribe, because I'm sure there were people who were having trouble with fertility back then as well. And what would that have looked like, and why, would their society have had the same issues as our society? And I mean, who knows? Maybe they were completely different. Maybe they revered these women and thought that they were special in some way. It's hard to know. But I think that for my main character, Zazime there, she would have been sad. So I had her being mournful of this. But then when the events all kick in, she has to deal with this massive climate disaster. And and that's... without giving too much more away.
Yeah, it's really hard not to, because I just like, but that bit. But one thing that I thought was interesting was how you'd had characters in there around her, as without spoiling it, significant character in the female character who does judge her and threatens her. There's this underlying kind of threat because of her infertility. Trying really hard not to spoil. Anyway, but it is But some of that language, I mean, clearly, obviously, you're writing with the reader, the modern day reader in mind, and that language has to be relatable. And I guess it's another question somewhere in there that I haven't yet formulated around that language, but it's just so relatable. It reminded me actually of Annie Kirby's Hollow Sea, in that there's this thing, there's an incident in that book that just you go, I've heard that before. And it's exactly the same with this particular character. And she says something and you think, oh, God, yeah, I've heard that one. In a different way, but it's all the same thing, that there are these, again, it's the safety of knowing that the author holds that space. So you can look at the words and go, I know that hurt. I know, and I can relate to that hurt so well. It's a very powerful moment. There are very powerful moments that occur through because of that relationship between these two characters.
And it's nice that I've had parents that I know contact me and say,
have you? I was going to ask, have you had that?
Like who have said, and people who knew me during the time have contacted me and said, I never thought that, it was like this for you, that it was so, because of course we go through it with the front, like we have this, hard exterior and we're just pushing through. But, and some friends who have come back and said, gosh, was I there for you? And they're now doubting whether, and, if they weren't, it wasn't necessarily their fault, because it was just that I didn't know if they wanted to hear about this. I didn't feel that I had the permission to even bring this up as a thing that was happening to me, because it just seems so taboo. Taboo is the only word I can think of for it.
Yeah.
But what I did discover, and what I've seen a lot of since, is I feel like it's like I've come out.
Yes, there is a feeling of that. I was talking to a friend of mine who actually is trans, and he has said that there are some parallels. We've sat down and gone, there are some parallels, not to demean one journey or another or disrespect each other, just generally over a couple of beers. You've gone, and
it's interesting. You're talking about this thing about journeys. Like there's nobody gets to, midlife without having had some serious knocks and some serious things to get through, and grief and all that there. And so we all have that. It was just that I felt that my grief wasn't given weight, because one, it was hidden, and two, I think sometimes parents do this thing where they think about childlessness as how they lived before they had their children, and they
isn't it infuriating? It's not.
Remembering that time with such nostalgia and longing, and just kind of going, yeah, but like, can you imagine being stuck in the same Groundhog Day every day for the rest of your life? What I mean? That's kind of what it feels like. Yeah. And so, but then when I look at my childless and child-free friends, we all have a slightly different. We've come through this slightly differently. Some people have never conceived, and I know this because I was in that place before I had my one conception, that I was almost jealous of people who were having miscarriages because they got that far, and it just was such a horrible thing to think and say and admit to. But I just wanted to be able to get to that point. And then I did. But my friend, she opened up to me and she said, I was jealous because, and I was like, I completely understand that, So jealous is a strong word to use, I suppose. But, it's just that envy of you've gotten to that point.
Yes. Yeah. No, so, I can relate to that. Yeah.
So, so then there are people who, maybe never tried at all, but it was probably because they weren't in a place, they didn't have a partner who wanted children, or they just didn't have a partner who was suitable to be a parent, and they were in a relationship that was maybe abusive or not set up for parenting. And then by the time they kind of figured this out, it was too late, or they chose the love of this person over, so there are all different ways to it. But what I've found is that anybody I've ever talked to who has been down the road of IVF, like I have done, that like I did after I actually conceived naturally, but then I went down the road of IVF after that, and I sort of feel like we all have nearly the same, it's nearly like a script. You'll say, oh, and did you feel? Yes, I remember that, and I felt this, and this was it, you know, and then you realize that you're not this weird outlier person who has these strange emotions, and you know that it's okay that whenever now it's grandparents, but you know, now whenever your friend says they're going to be a grandparent, it's okay to have that clench in your heart, and you can have two emotions at once. You can be delighted for them, and you can be sad for you, and the two can exist at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really, when you accept that, and when you know that that's okay, then I think you're really on the road to healing, and because it's never going away. It is never going away, in the same way that a death never goes away, you know. So I think that that's really important for us to know that. And even if the rest of the world kind of doesn't get it, I now know that there are people out there who do, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, we close every episode with "You are not alone," and it's so very, very true.
And that's why
that's
the value of what you guys have been doing for, you know, you said 7 years now, you know. So yeah, I wish I'd found you. Like, I wish you'd been there for like 14 years ago, whenever it was all. You know.
I wish we'd been there 14 years ago, because our timelines are very similar. But again, my story is the same. You're in a space here where IVF is a theme.
Yeah.
And within that, it's interesting, isn't it, that you have, I think in Baron, you've got many themes of infertility in there. And how relatable they all are anyway, because infertility, childlessness, I mean, we've found that really, I guess probably 7 years, and continually kind of every month bringing out a podcast, and also within our online community as well, is that people are joined by one thing of not being a parent, not by choice. But within that are so many different reasons as to why. I mean, every episode that we do is everyone brings a different story, and it's their unique words and unique experiences. The common factor is that, it hurts to carry it alone. And to not talk about it. And it's ridiculous, because it's like in childlessness, we should be talking about all the different reasons as to why we all get here, as opposed to kind of the one. And certainly touching on that whole thing of actually being envious of people who've actually miscarried, then I've certainly I have miscarried, but I'm very conscious that I've had conversations with people, very honest and brutal conversations, but important conversations, I want to say, around the fact that they have not miscarried. Because they have not conceived. And it is an incredibly complex emotion. Is it better to have conceived and lost? Or is it better to not have done any of that? Because that is such I think the only I can't think of any more eloquent word than it's just such a mindfuck to have to go through a miscarriage is so awful. And it's really hard, because everything about childlessness absolutely is really, really hard. And if you know there's someone out there who's been through it, again, the safety of reading a book where the author, I keep going back to this, don't I? This is the third time I mentioned it, but it's the safety of being supported by an author that gets it, because I didn't feel at any point when I read Baron, indeed any book when I have known, purely through, thankfully, the full stop, or through any other means, I've known that the author shares some parts of my story, or that infertility, that I know that there's not going to be something at the end that's going to kind of make me go, oh, I don't feel like I've got to just check the ending first, in case.
That was so part of the story. So I don't think this is a spoiler, but I really wanted to write a book about infertility that did not end with a pregnancy for the main character, who was suffering from, or living with, or dealing with, or coping with infertility, and that was really important to me. And I just haven't been able to find many books like that. And I did, way back in the 90s, I read John Elton's book Inconceivable. But it was very blokey, you know. It was more of a comedy, and looking at the ridiculousness of some of the things you go through when you're going through, and you know, like IVF especially. And he left it kind of open at the end, like there was still that window of hope at the end. And sometimes that window of hope is so destroying, you know. It's like, you know, sometimes you just feel like jumping out a window because, you know, it's just. it's destructive nearly sometimes, although I think that hope is a very powerful thing, but maybe it's a bit like the daffodils, throw your hope into something else, and so there's that. But I would have to say that I do love that you're like the Full Stop podcast, that you have men and women involved with it, that the male perspective of childlessness is also part of, just thinking of Ben Elton there, is also part of your discussion. And I know that in Baron, I tried a little bit to bring in.
Yes, you did. Yes.
The two men of the two protagonists, and I have to say that I do have such a soft spot for Nereus, because
he's lovely. We all need him.
So kind, and he was so the way I had them set up was that she is in that and this is true of at least pre-Christian times here, that there were no gender roles for your career, for want of a better, for what you did. And so if you were a hunter, you hunted whether you were male or female. So Zazami was a hunter. She had that hunting instinct, and that was what she did. But Nereus was he was an artist, and at that time when agriculture was coming in, there was a Renaissance period. People think that like it's like Clan of the Cave Bear or something. No, there was a Renaissance of art and craft and weaving. He was a weaver. He made masks and that. And there was a lot of metal work and stuff going on with the Bronze Age. So I wanted him to be what we would consider in our today's society a more feminine role of the artist, and he was married to the more masculine role that Zazami took of the hunter who went out and fed everybody. And she also didn't like giving way to the agriculturalists. They were a different movement as far as she was concerned. She liked the old ways. So it's a little bit like the people who like to read a book as opposed to an ebook. Yes. I was kind of playing about with those things, but he was so like, I think there's a line in it where he says that it's something about how she is this whole world, and that doesn't change regardless of what happens with them and children, And in the modern timeline, Ben is like that too. He chooses, going back to the Neolithic time. Sorry, they would have had the choice to dissolve their marriage. Again, this is going back to sort of Druidic customs that I do know of. And they have a choice after a year to dissolve the marriage if it's not working. And possibly that could be one indicator that the marriage is not working if there are no offspring. So, but he, it was about, is he going to keep on choosing her? And that was always in her mind. And that was part of the
very much there, isn't it? There is that tension all along.
So it is that concept of I had two marriages. The first one broke down, and it was in part because of infertility, I suspect. But my marriage now, so that first one was just a trial run, practice marriage. But my marriage now is it has brought us closer together. I'm happy to say that we, that is something that has cemented us together, rather than pushed us apart. But I've experienced it both ways, It is definitely a hard thing for people to lose both the future children and the person who they're with. That was a dark abyss to go into. But I was so lucky that I was out the other side of it and in a good place. So I'm lucky.
I think that's lovely. And I think he's just such a lovely character. He reminds me very much of all of the, like a bundle of all of the men that I've been very privileged to meet through my childhood journey. There are elements in there that I think that reminds me of Michael, and that reminds me of other people as well that I've met too. Yeah. And I think that's...
And how they love the children. Yeah, and how they play with the child.
Yeah, and the wideness of the character as well. I think you're right. It kind of, I've been very lucky to go to a few talks within the university here in Cambridge about kind of gender roles and around sexuality back in ancient times, so back in ancient Greece and ancient Britain. And actually, we've got an awful lot to blame kind of Victorians for. You're kind of like going, you have to do this, and you have to do this, and you have to dress like this and be like this, and you have to do these things, and to categorize people. And we're talking sort of pre-Victorian, but Victorians really embrace this stuff. And actually, it's only kind of like we were, humans were, that was kind of largely incidental. The way we dressed, our sexuality, kind of anything like that. There's so much evidence in early kind of in paintings and in history and stories that tell us that actually it was okay to be trans, to be gender fluid. It was fine. It wasn't an issue.
It was like what you're saying is it was okay to be you.
It was okay to be you. Yeah. Okay to be you. How much is weighted around childlessness? I don't know, because I think there is always that fear that we're all going to die out, I suppose, and it's happening now, isn't it? In the news now, people are worried that women aren't having children, and I'm sitting there constantly going, okay, childless, hi, hello. Just because we're not, it doesn't mean to say that we can. Yes. We just have a conversation about that? But anyway, that's a whole nother thing, and we'll get into politics if we're not too careful. We try to avoid that if we can. Other than I
think you say that nearly difficult. Every episode I've ever listened to.
Yeah, so where do you start? I mean, let's do political podcast.
But like having children is a political action now. Nearly,
God, it is,
having them or not having them. So yeah.
Yes, yeah, it's yeah. It is that. We had Christina Cooper on the podcast a long time ago, and I'm sure it was her that said to her relations, one of her favourite phrases is "get out of my uterus." And it does feel very like that right now. It's just definitely. Like, can politicians just back off, and give us the the choices and the platform to be able to speak. Yeah.
Because it's not just putting the pressure on women; it's also putting the pressure on the men.
Yeah,
alongside those women.
Yes, exactly.
Either way,
Yeah.
So.
It is, yeah. Or it again. It's this thing of it's the ways the woman's fault. No. Yeah.
Yeah, provide childcare. Provide,
Yeah, care for the planet. That would be good. So we don't feel like that's kind of slipping away from us. Let's have a good framework here. Yeah.
Thank you. Rule the world.
Oh, if we all did, wouldn't it be amazing? It would be fabulous. We'd actually have conversations about these important things. Biddy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for
this has been just lovely.
Yeah.
I could sit and natter to you for the rest. Michael's just sitting there laughing at me now. Michael Hughes. I just love talking to authors. I have written a very short story once in something that when I was going through my grief at its worst time, and I'm always aware that I write better and I create better when I'm really low. So I now just like to interview and chat to people who do that so well and don't need to be in a crisis myself most of the time anyway.
So I think I mean there is this thing about writers, they need to be bleeding before they can produce anything.
Yeah, totally.
Definitely.
Yeah. I'm totally that person. Yeah, it's not good.
I've actually really enjoyed sitting here listening. It's been quite a joy to listen to you, Biddy, because there's a lot of things that you touched on that resonated with me a lot. I just want to share a story because now I'm older than both of you. I can do that. I'm full of stories. So I was 2 weeks ago, I was out west in what you would call the outback in a quarry, dusty environment, very, very, very blokey environment, let's just say. And here I am, I'm having a conversation with a guy who, and it'll make sense when we get there, having a conversation with a guy who's telling me that he's just knocked over 40 and he thought that he was going to not have children when he wanted to be a dad all his life. Oh. And so I always turn the conversation around what I do, podcasts, because you never know who you might meet and who you talk to. Anyway, so through the conversation, he says, look, I've met someone else and we've been able to get pregnant. And you can see him stop and go, I hope that's okay if I tell you this. And I thought, how nice was that?
Yeah.
But then also I said, mate, look, because blokey environment, but mate, listen, just because I have this grief that walks beside me doesn't mean I don't want to hear a good story. Yeah. So tell me.
Yeah.
Tell me how it feels. Tell me what it's like. And you never know when you can have these special moments. And here I am in high-vis work gear in a dusty quarry in the middle of bloody nowhere. So listening to you talk about they can both coexist, really resonated with me. And one of the other things too, sorry to bring this back to family tree, you talk about what we leave behind. And that's one of the reasons that motivates me to do a family tree, I'm going to leave that behind, because there's going to be people like me that want to research their family. They want to delve down the rabbit holes of the different branches. And so, yeah, I've really enjoyed listening to you. So my question all the time is, if I come to Ireland, can Vicky and I have coffee with you?
Absolutely. In fact, if you didn't, I'd be highly insulted and I'd come to Australia and track you down. Absolutely. There is nothing I love more than showing off Armagh, the city of Armagh. It's a very small little city, but it's a little jewel. It's absolutely beautiful. And we have gorgeous architecture. We have Navan Fort, which is a very ancient monument that goes back thousands of years. But we don't have a lot of modern stuff, but we have great culture and do come visit. Yeah.
Well, I'm closer. I'm off. Bye. I see you.
I bet I'll get there before you.
You probably will, I should think, actually. Actually, no, you're not. You're not, because I know your travel plans and I know the scale of your garden renovation. I know things, so I might just make it there before you go.
Yeah.
So I have a question, Biddy. One last question, and then we'll let you go. But is your book going to ever come out in an audio book?
Actually, we're working on that right now.
Oh, thank God!
Yeah,
exciting.
Yeah. We have. I'm closely connected with the Armagh Theatre Group, and one of the actors there is reading it at the moment. So we've just started.
You're not reading it. You've got such a beautiful voice, Biddy. But I do know it's hard to read your own words.
Honestly, she read the first chapter, and I had goosebumps. I mean,
wow.
It was just the most gorgeous experience to hear your work read by somebody else and putting. And she does Poppy's voice so beautifully. I mean, honestly.
I was going to ask, how does Poppy sound? I'm going to wait and find out. I'm going to find out.
It's lovely. And so I don't, again, this is, my husband's a techie person. And so he's doing our living room is full at the minute of like things that look like little miniature cranes with microphones hanging down and stuff like that, So, and he's very, very strict about like ambient sound and everything. So, but yeah, we're working on that, and it's beautiful. It's just sounding beautiful. I have to, and I know it's my book and that, but Bridie does her name is Bridie Heaney. She's been acting with Armagh Theatre Group for years. She's been in a few of the plays that I've written and co-written, so I knew she'd do a good job, but she really has brought a different element to it for me, so I'm excited about it. Yeah.
Fantastic. And it's a massive investment, audiobooks, in terms of time and money as well. So I'm really pleased that you're doing that. It's a lot. So yeah. Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you very much. It's fantastic talking to you. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I absolutely have. I did forget that I was being recorded, so that's good.
Yeah. Always a worry, isn't it? But yeah. We edit, it's fine. Thank you so much for joining us, and a massive thank you from our audience as well. We have people in our audience, and they're just saying thank you. It's a really interesting conversation, and I've loved listening to you as well. So thank you so much, Biddy. We've really enjoyed our time with you. It's been a dose of joy on a rather soggy Sunday morning over here. It's probably a very hot afternoon somewhere in Australia, evening. But yeah, it's been lovely. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Full Stop podcast.
We really hope you enjoyed your time with us. As always, you can head to www.thefullstoppod.com to sign up to our email newsletter, check out all the show notes, the resources, and join our online community to carry on the conversation. And as always, please remember, you are not alone.
And I'm pressing record now just in case we get any more morsels of goodness before we start.
Michael has a face. There is a face that you have, Michael. And I can't pull it because I don't know how to, but you have a face on you that's just like, oh, I'm missing some stuff here and I need to hit record face. It's a bit like a mini kind of panic face, but not a panic face. And it's your...
Well, I'm thinking, how good is this? This is what we need, this stuff. And then we'll hit record and then go silence.
And I can see you go like that from across the miles. Michael's slight recording panic face. There you go. That's our new thing.
I feel like I've just clammed up as soon as I see the record button go. I'm like,
Yeah, I know. Us too. Don't worry. Honestly, we do.
We've been doing this for, 6, 7? This is our 7th year, and we're the same. Press record. There's stone cold silence.